On the 27th and 28th of September 2008, a group of near strangers were drawn together from across the world. Meeting at the Lensbury Club, Teddington, this unlikely group of friends represented all walks of life, all types of occupation, although there seemed to be a larger than usual proportion of scientists and teachers amongst them, and all social backgrounds, from America, Canada, Australia, Mexico, and across the UK they had travelled, some at great personal expense, just to meet one another. While the rest of the planet was watching the world's banking system collapse, these newfound friends were drifting in hyperspace, a nowhere place known well by science fiction pundits. They were out of time, quite literally, soaking in wave after wave of nostalgia for their childhoods and having the time of their lives doing it. What had brought them together on this bright autumnal weekend? A little-known science fiction show called The Tomorrow People. First broadcast in 1973, this series ran on ITV for 5 seasons, combining the multicoloured kitsch of the era with the progressive political ideologies left over from the 60s. This show really caught the atmosphere of the time. It centred around a small group of teenagers who, after breaking out, became the next stage of human evolution. Until 1978, they battled against sinister military departments bent on controlling them, as well as evil aliens intent on controlling the Earth.
Why don't we use kids who have special power in their mind, like they might be the next stage of human evolution, so that every child in the
children,
audience...
but it was treated you like an adult, like you could understand stuff.
I really liked how they were able to save the world and even help the aliens who could have destroyed the Earth through a non-violent solution.
It wasn't until years later that I realized that there were some moral and ethical issues involved, when to do the right thing, when it's the wrong thing, how to treat another human being, or in their case, an alien.
But the series was plagued, like many other industries in the 70s, by industrial action, eventually disappearing from our screens in 1978. Or so it seemed. In 1992, Nickelodeon, an upcoming children's channel in the US, launched its own version of the show. This was a more glamorous version than the 1970s series, with higher production values and a more international cast. But at its core, viewers could still connect with the show's central message.
This show, it was about kids who were different. It was basically about kids who didn't fit in, were different from others, could do things others couldn't.
The idea of taking the weird kid in class, the outsider, and turning that idea positive.
And it was a programme which just sort of had other people who were also going through problems growing up and new identities, finding new powers, and it just sort of resonated.
Growing up as a minority, and feeling that I had special gifts that I could share with everybody.
So you could look up to them a little bit and think, oh, in a couple of years, maybe I could have those special powers and I can use my mind to talk to other people and I'll be able to appear and disappear.
Particularly appealed to people who perhaps didn't quite fit in, with their school friends, because they could watch the programme and identify with somebody who was different, and the person was different because they were a tomorrow person, and that in a way empowered any child that watched the programme.
It wasn't until 2000 that Big Finish Productions took up the mantle, this time in audio format, reuniting the original cast with new characters and situations and stories that had a more adult feel. These adventures took the TP to new heights until 2007.
Every teenager at one stage goes through that feeling of I'm the only person like me in the world, and feels out of it, or whether they were bullied or not. And I think that's the appeal of the original show.
This was fandom at its best, a meeting of like-minded people who came together to share more than the admiration for a kids' TV show. This disparate group represents a growing subculture within our society. At times when the planet's economic, social and environmental future is uncertain, people are looking for an ethos to live by. They are seeking a set of acceptable principles to guide their lives, and for many, the science fiction genre fulfills that need.
With all science fiction programs, it seems to have longevity. Most TV programs you can't even remember the name of, never mind the actors who were in it and what day they were filmed on and what studio. These guys can tell you everything about these shows. They're just infectious, I think.
Well, it's been fascinating actually speaking to fans and people, hearing people's first-hand stories of kind of how it's affected them. And I think it's just the overriding thing is that people who are not absolutely the norm and mainstream people, people that might be slightly more on their own, watching the Tomorrow People kind of made them feel that everything was okay, and there were others like them around.
I think it's got a fantastic message, and I think that's why it's stood the test of time, and that's why we're still here talking about it now 35 years later.
I think it was sort of quite aspirational, for the audience watching it, to think they might be able to develop their talents in some interesting way.
I remember writing a line of dialogue where one of the characters says, I feel like I'm looking at life through a window the whole time. And I remember feeling that when I was young, and for me that was a kind of key to it.
When you were growing up, my one was Lost in Space. So I remember that, Lost in Space and the Monkeys. I used to love those things, and you'd kind of like idolise. You'd want to be that character, And I think that's what the Tomorrow People is for a lot of people. That they don't think it's kind of like they remember what they were doing when they were watching it. Something might have happened to them, and they were watching that programme. So they have it. It's kind of like a nice thing to remember, and they can.
It's just lovely to meet people who are so enthusiastic about it. It makes you feel all the more privileged to be a part of it, and it is due to the fans that we have had this lovely job, this ongoing job for 7 years.
I think it captured people's imagination. There's that whole idea of jaunting, and that alone was a lovely idea, a lovely word to think of, to jaunt, because you just jaunt somewhere, and that they would put this belt on and just sort of float through time and space.
There's people from Tennessee, Australia, Canada, America, whatever, and do you know what? I'm humbled.
Celebrating its 35th anniversary, this convention was organised to reunite the original 70s cast with the actors from the 90s remake and most recent audio adventures. Giving their time for free were actors, directors, writers and producers, all helping to raise money for Cancer Research UK.
Groups this morning. First up we have the producers and writers. They'll be followed by the new series cast, then the audio cast, and then the original series later on. Jackie is a roving reporter with the mic, so if anybody has a question for the producers and writers we have, I'm sure they don't need any introduction by this stage. So we've got Roger, Lee, Grant and Nigel. So if anyone has any questions, please raise their hands.
Okay, question over in the middle there, Jackie. I have a question for Roger. I wonder if you can give us a definitive answer as to why Stephen left.
In truth, he was probably getting too big and too awkward for the part.
but I was absolutely unable to see that because I'm going through that now with a very old dog. And it has, you know, I mean, he was the light of my life and is the light of my life, and yet now he's 15-year-old setter and he has trouble walking 100 yards and arthritic and so on. And I still see him in my mind's eye as running like the wind forever, and I just know that it's going to be weeks or months at the most before the vet turns to me and says, "It would be kinder, you know." And God knows what I'm going to do then. And it was the same with PVC, and I was under pressure from everybody to drop him, and it took me a whole season after that pressure started to do it, and that was only because Sue Turner finally said, he's going. Or we'll either end the series or he goes. And I said, we'll end the series. And Sue said, what about all the other people in it? Don't you care about them? She knew how to tug my strings all right. And that's what happened. But I was very deeply affected by that, and to a large extent still am.
To Nick and PVC, I mean, we're all incredibly grateful for the amount you do for the fans and how happy you are to talk to us all. And we really appreciate all of your efforts with the introductory sketch and Peter's video. I was wondering whether you ever expected the fandom to continue the way it has, and whether you enjoy events like this, or whether you find us all a bit scary.
Why can't it be both?
You just spot my answer. We do enjoy them, and we do find them very more aliens in this room than we ever encountered. I think it's a tremendous surprise to all of us. Isn't it a surprise to you too, that we're all here 35, 40 years later, and we'll probably still be here in 50 years. Despite the fact Jackie threatens never to do another one of these, I don't really believe that, do you?
You brought the Tomorrow people into the 21st century
Right.
with the CDs and the stories. Was it a bit more challenging to you as a writer because of chaos that's going on? Were you able to work around it mentally?
Gosh, that's a really interesting question. Do you know, I think the chaos made it easier for me, because what Tomorrow People always meant to me when I was growing up, and certainly when I became artistically involved in the CDs, was hope. And I think that was, whether it's hope in, as it was for me when I was being bullied in the playground or for being different, it was hope then, and I'm sure a lot of you feel that way. Or whether it's faced with the monstrosities of 9/11, war in Iraq, whatever the monstrosities are that we have in our life, there was this fantastic vision, Roger's vision, that there is hope, there is a next stage, we're going to get through this into something better. And the way that I approached the Tomorrow People as a writer and as a producer was that you've got that hope, you've got the awfulness, and the drama comes from marrying the two. How do you cope with living in this world, which is imperfect, when you're the potentially perfect? And how do you marry the two? And I find that fascinating.
I had a question for Liam Grant, actually. The new series seemed to end very abruptly, just when it was... I think the final series of the new series had the best storylines and the characters had developed. I'd like to know where you saw it going next, and whether you had any other story ideas or plans in mind.
Yeah, well, we kind of hoped that it would run as long as the original had. The plan was, in our minds, that it would really take off and become as successful as the original. I think one of the areas that we were going to be looking at was reaching back into some of the earlier, original ideas and bringing them forwards. We just tried to re-establish the new set of characters that Roger had sort of conjured up in the 90s, and we built on that. And I'm sure that if the series had gone on and on and on, that we would have done a little bit what Russell T has done on Doctor Who, which is to go back.
Well, I do have a question for Danny.
I'm on the mic now, aren't I?
I had the impression from something you said last night that you actually watched the original series when you were younger.
Yes, right, yeah.
Could you just give us what your impressions of it were? You seem to think you said that being on the new series was something you wanted to do because of the original. Is that true? Or how did that work?
I take it that, like a lot of people, they say they're not science fiction fans, which usually is, a load of baloney, because science fiction seems to be the biggest selling thing no matter what genre you look at. I mean, all the biggest movies are science fiction and all the biggest TV shows are science fiction, yet nobody wants to admit to be a science fiction fan. And they call people that go to science fiction gatherings strange. Well, yeah, I think it's stranger not to admit it.
My friends and I from high school have been talking about coming to England since grade school, forever. And finally, I said, oh my gosh, they're having this hyperspace. And so we said, all right, let's do it. So it finally brought us here.
Dr. Henry Jenkins, Professor of Comparative Media Studies at MIT, suggests that there are two important aspects to any fan. Fans tend to poach ideas and ideals from what they watch, and then create a world view to guide their lives. They also belong to a social community of like-minded people, where their own interpretations of the moral and social guidelines laid down in the show are fully accepted. Tomorrow People fans definitely fulfill both of these criteria. So what do these people gain from their sense of belonging to a fandom?
At today's event, we have people from the United States, people from Mexico, people from here in England, from Scotland, and we've got people from Australia. So they win the award for the longest distance travel.
So for me, it was a thing to find people like myself, and I've done that through the fandom. I found a lot of other people who had similar experiences. So for me, even though I like seeing the actors and the stars, a lot of it's just meeting people who I've known for 10 years or more online and never actually met before. So it was coming over to meet other fans.
Just the whole thing, just meeting other fans, meeting some of the cast, and just having a whole weekend of thinking about the Tomorrow People.
A couple of years ago, I saw, randomly seeing if I could find anything about the Tomorrow People, I saw something from Jackie going, is there any interest in people getting together? And I was like, oh, yes, please, let me, please. And I emailed her and said, maybe. And so I actually planned my entire holiday for the entire year around this so I could come.
But it's very good to see all the people you've been emailing for 10 years. Or I've been on the email list for 12 years. So it's been to see my friends from all over the world in one place and to share in this dream we all have of creating a better world.
First time I've been to this club, first time I've been to any Tomorrow People gathering at all. The first time I've come out of the closet, as I put it to Jackie.
I think some of it was almost prophetic because of what's going on with global warming and things happening in the world, and it's kind of scary. I think Roger Price had an incredible vision, and because of his creation, I think I've got a pretty good view of the world. And it came at an impressionable time in my life. I would argue that ages 12 to 15 are some of the most impressionable years of your life, very important years where what you take in is kind of the base of where you put your thinking as you get older.
And this is something I've always followed. There's been kind of a gap between a 10-year gap probably since watching the show and then discovering it on the internet again.
And it's going to be a great opportunity to mingle with them again and talk about the show, mingle with other fans, and hopefully have a really good celebration of the show.
Nostalgia, it really makes me feel like I'm 7 again, just hearing the music and seeing the actors, and also obviously seeing other people who feel enthusiastic and happy about it as well, you know.
Because all the cast seemed to gel together, they all seemed to get on very well, and that came across on screen. And it was just a very good show. You forget the wobbly sets and some bad acting, but it was a pretty good show and I really enjoyed it. It was escapism.
I know there's a lot of science fiction fans and Star Trek fans and all that sort of stuff, but Tomorrow People are a bit different. We're a bit more reserved, we're a bit more quiet. We don't fit in generally, and we certainly don't do crowds and events, but this is like a family. It just feels like everybody knows each other and everybody gets on because we're all on the same wavelength, and I think that's fantastic.
So being part of a fandom means that you belong. In its simplest form, belonging is another type of love. Humans like to experience a sense of emotional equilibrium, and this is achieved through high self-esteem and personal achievements. Unconditional positive regard is something that the psychologist Rogers suggested all children see from their parents. This in turn boosts our sense of self-worth. Unfortunately, in today's stress-laden society, we often reach adulthood feeling unfulfilled in this regard. Belonging to a fandom can help, in part, meet that need, in particular by obtaining emotional proximity to fellow fans and to the content of a TV show itself. Fans can achieve this by writing, reading, and contributing to online social forums, where feedback from fellow fans is direct and very immediate. Having a closely knit family helps to strengthen one's sense of belonging. As family stability has become less defined in today's society, fandom replaces it, especially the feeling that you would be missed if you weren't there. No one attending could deny the family feeling of this convention. The weekend offered more than mere escape, but an alternative reality more humane and democratic than society today.
We paint the floors first, allow them to dry, then they're lacquered in case it rains outside. Crew come in, a board like that would be nigh on impossible, so we lacquer it. That takes a while to dry. Then the sets go down, the Jews for writers, editors, graphics,
They have names. Yes, they have names.
Real life often falls short of the ideals many fans feel. Family values are disintegrating in society, but the family